This is The Beat with Radia B, a conversation about the Charleston County Sheriff's Office in our community. Welcome to The Beat, hosted by Radia B. In our latest episode, we have here with us Dr. DaNine Fleming. How you doing, Dr. Fleming?
I am wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Please tell us about yourself and your organization.
Sure. So I am DaNine Fleming. I'm from Give Hand, South Carolina, so I am a country girl from here, from South Carolina.
Awesome.
I believe in community investment. I absolutely love people. By day, I'm the Associate Chief Officer for Inclusive Excellence at the Medical University of South Carolina, and unconscious bias faculty scholar, as well as Associate Professor. Cool. By afternoon, evening, night, I do anything you can imagine as being one of the co-founders for Taking Back Our Village, a life member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated.
I knew you was going to include that.
You know I had to. And also, I am the business manager for the McNeil Foundation for the Awareness of Domestic Violence and Abuse. So you'll see that most of the themes that I have are about children, about people, and about our community.
Oh, well, great. Tell us a little bit about Taking Back Our Village and why you became involved in it.
Sure. So Taking Back Our Village is a community organization that was founded because of so much youth violence within the community. And the impetus for the organization or the advisory council was the murders that are still unsolved that happened in Myrtle Beach with Devontae, Jamie, and Sandy, who are from Somerville. And people were just on Facebook outraged that something like that could happen to people we knew and all the things. And everybody was like, who's going to do something? Hundreds of people. So I was one of those people, who's going to do something? And someone said, you're going to do something. I'm thinking, why me? So it was at that point, Keisha Tucker, it was Paige Roper, it was Tisa Wack and myself, and then so many others joined. And the mayor of Lincolnville, Mayor Dewberry, we reached out and we're looking for a place to have a forum, just a place where people could talk, because so many young people were angry and we're talking about retaliation and talking about so many things. And so he was like, well, what about the police? And I'm like, I don't know how that'll go, but I may feel safer.
Right.
And so it was about gathering people together. And once we were able to do that, the forum was standing room only. And as we had the conversation of what we could do to keep our community safer, people began to say, mothers who were there, family members of those who were murdered were there. It's like, we can't let this end. We got to continue. And so that was the start in 2014 of Taking Back Our Village, that turned into an advisory council of community members that includes the mayor, that includes Charleston County Sheriff's Office, that includes many individuals, organizations who are concerned about our community.
Tell us about the town of Lincolnville.
So Lincolnville is one of the oldest, actually not one of, the oldest historical city or town in the state of South Carolina. It's very unique and has a interesting history, but I'll say this, it is one of those best kept secret places. And unfortunately, usually when it's on the news or anything happens, it's because something bad has happened. But there are so many great things that happen in the town of Lincolnville. I didn't realize there was law enforcement there, and I didn't know Charleston County Sheriff Office really worked so closely with Town and Gown, and nor did I know about the fire department, just many things that happened in Lincolnville. So I was a learner starting in 2014 for the things I didn't know.
Wow, that's so great. So tell us a little bit about the event that you guys just hosted.
Sure. So what I love most about the Cops and Kids Back to School Bash, and I have to say it was the 6th annual, but I call it 6.5 because last year would have been 6, but because of COVID, we had to do a virtual event. Let me give Charleston County Sheriff Office credit for the great things that you all do, because one of the things that's amazing is every time there's a transition, it's not like, oh, who's going to be here from the Sheriff Office, who's going to sit, because we meet monthly.
Right.
And we email, we keep in touch. There are things, there's a business that has to occur, et cetera. Anytime there's a transition, the person who is currently sitting at the table makes sure they bring the next person and they introduce them. It's community building. It is about relationship. And that is the relationship we've had since 2014. So it's not just someone showing up with a badge and I'm here.
Right.
So that's number one. Secondly, when we thought of, unlike any other organization, we didn't want to have things all the time where people get tired, et cetera. We wanted something to be impactful, that could be systemic, that the community could be a part of. We didn't want officers just showing up with your toys. You know, y'all got great little SWAT things and all these other things. We wanted there to be engagement. And so as we were sitting around the table, there's about 10 to 12 of us, including a student who's on the advisory council. We were like, well, maybe something that's fun. How about back to school? Well, there's a lot of those going on. So we just came up with this idea that we would do a Cops and Kids Back to School Bash. And that would mean law enforcement presence, but engagement. We didn't want you to show up and just have to stand by your boats and your dogs. It had to be that there was active engagement with the children in the community. And so we began to work together. That very first one had about 300 people. As of before COVID, we had almost 800 people at that one. And this past year, 2.5 weeks ago, we had about 501 is the exact number.
Wow.
But I'm going to say this too. It's more than a community event. It's a family. It's like a family reunion. It's people coming together, not only from Lincolnville, but from any place, to come and commune together, to meet law enforcement, to know that we can work together, we can play together, and we want everyone to remain safe, and we want to be in partnership.
Wow. So that's true community engagement.
Definitely.
So with that being said, tell me a little bit about your thoughts about community partnerships and how they matter.
So I don't believe we could have a community without partnerships. That's why it's called Taking Back Our Village. I remember, and so many people on the advisory council, we just remember having that village, the people that it didn't matter where you lived. If you did something you weren't supposed to do, somebody was going to come and say, stop it.
Yes.
It didn't matter if it was whoever it was, that we really had to work together. It was usually sometimes the church for those who are affiliated. And if you were not affiliated, it was everybody coming together. And with so much going on in the world, and I call it the George Floyd effect now, especially in everything else, racial unrest, this whole divide, we were like, we're not going to have that. We want to show that law enforcement officers are human, just like we are. They have lives just like we do. And so when we think about how we engage the community, we are the community. They are the community. We're in this together. So if we win together. If we don't win, then we don't win together. So we could just do so much more working together. And that's what we've been able to do. And you all have made it easy. And I won't say things are always perfect around the world, but I have to remind community members all the time, what we see on television may be indicative of some officers and people, but that's not everybody. And that's not what we've seen. So we got to keep remembering, and we can come back to tangible things. Every time we're at the table, so is Charleston County Sheriff's Office. Every time we're having forums, the presence is there. And so you see this, and you've seen this since 2014. So people will say things like, well, I don't think it's sustainable. Since 2014, I think it's rather sustainable.
Right. And like the theory of change happens over time. Dr. Fleming, please explain to our viewers and our other community members about talking the walk, walking the talk.
Sure. I know that we've had such great participation, but this year I was astounded when I walked outside, because I was inside making sure things were going well, making sure that people were separated and, had masks on while getting school supplies. I walked out and the sheriff was there, and I'm looking around like, okay, this is different.
Leadership.
And not only that she didn't stand by officers who were like protector. She walked in, she was playing basketball with kids. She was doing the little water things. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So, and everybody's like, just chill, because I was the one that was like, oh, that's the sheriff, as if it was just amazing. But what I recognize is that is the epitome of leadership. And when the person who is saying the things that you should do actively participates, actively engage, and they walk the talk, it makes it so much easier for everyone else. Now, everybody always did, but I have to be honest and say, I had all kinds of biases. I didn't recognize some of my biases with police officers let's be real. I'm Black, I'm from the South, I'm a female. Some of my experience have not always been positive, not that they've been negative. And it's just been interesting. And I always, one of our forums was Black and Blue, kind of the fine line. But what I didn't notice until about year 4, because that was the first time I saw it, officers would come and they would volunteer. Everyone from the sheriff's office would come and volunteer. And we work hard because it's outside in August. It's hot. We're doing all these things together and never anything, just fun, prizes, games, engagement. That year, I, for the first time, saw officers and members who brought their families. They brought their significant others. They brought their little children. And I was standing there in shock, almost in tears, and someone was like, "What's wrong with you?"
Right.
I never thought about the fact that if these officers, these deputies, all of you bring your families and your people, there might be people out there that you've had encounters with that were not so pleasant. Right. Unlike me, I can go places and people may not know or may know, and it's not a big deal who my significant other or my child, my nephew is. But for those, that could be detrimental, but they felt safe. Right. Do you know how safe it makes the community feel when they see and can engage with folk and they don't see a uniform, they see the human who is a mother, a father, a significant other, grandparent? It just was phenomenal. And for me, that was the change. That just did it for me, saying, wow, we're really in this together because they feel safe. Now, it's the safest place ever when you're out there and you have all of these cars and all these people. But it just did something totally different, and it shows the shift in leadership. It shows that you all have always been leaders in that. And I'm going to say this, it's nothing against anyone else doing community work, because everyone should be. This is what we need to do. But it's how you do it and how well you do it. And let me tell you what else y'all do well. There's always a forum that people want to have, and it's the unsolved cases. It's the unsolved homicides. So that's a very tough forum, right? Because of what it is. Not only do you all lead it, but you get other branches of law enforcement, other departments together to do that. This is the first time we've had to do it virtual because of COVID, and we had parents on, and I'm always the one that's nervous, like, oh my goodness, Zoom, somebody's gonna say something, we can't mute them fast enough, but who upset because some of the things that people don't know is when I started this and Tisa was there, when we started this together, and so many people who are involved, and there's a list, and that people can look on Facebook to see who's the advisory council, because I wouldn't want to leave anybody out who participates. So I'm just talking today, I'm just one of many. Since that time, Chandra Bryant's son has been murdered. Since that time, Tisa Wax, their only children. Since that time, I've had a 22-year-old nephew that was murdered. So when we started this, we were doing a rally cry for other families and other people. How things change. I call it hashtag until it happens to you. And I don't want it to become that personal for anybody in this listening or viewing audience before they want to get involved. Come join us. Join law enforcement. You say there's something going on and you don't care for police. Come on, let's meet. Let's see. Let's sit around a table. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what we can do together, because I don't want anybody else to go through what we've gone through when things happen. I want us to continue to do things to bring us all together so we can understand what is going on and how.
Right. As I receive emails from you, I noticed at the bottom of your signature line is Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's statement, and it says, "True peace is not merely the absence of tension, but it is the presence of justice." Can you explain why you decided to put that statement in your signature line?
One of the reasons, because there was so much going on, especially with not only COVID, the community, and everyone, George Floyd, I can say Ahmaud, everything going on. And when you work not only in academic healthcare, then you wear that other hat when you work in the community, and people are always saying things. But the negative things are the things that get the airplay. I don't mind conflict. Unlike some people, I welcome it. I don't mind disagreement or tension. What I mind is passive aggressiveness, as well as microaggressions, and people who won't come to the table and have a discussion of how we can solve or at least work to eradicate some things. Will we ever solve everything? Maybe not. But we don't know unless we try. And I'm just one to believe we need to try together. And the only way there can be justice, and I tell people all the time, it's either justice that will roll down, where we make sure that people are treated treated equally as well as equitably, which is very different. as well as think about respecting the individual differences of everybody. If not, it will be just J-U-S-T, us, U-S.
Yes.
And I don't want to be in a community where we are alone, always in isolation, and always suspect of each other.
Right.
I want us to be able to talk through things so together we can decide what is going to work best. Lincolnville is different than other communities, but other communities, we all can get together and we can talk to the gatekeepers. We can find out.
So, Dr. Fleming, given in the position that you are in academia and in the community, can you talk about a little bit about how we have naysayers or folk in the community that say that gun violence or violence period is not an epidemic?
So that's a difficult one, and I'm smiling because I hear it too. I hear people who, some people who think that we're just kind of like doing this for airtime or air show. And for that, I'm going to say this. I still say hashtag until it happens to you, until that's your child. I didn't know what it was like until I received the phone call to say that was my nephew, and that we to how to identify a body. Mm-hmm. I didn't know I didn't know what that meant or what to do. I didn't until the first parent comes and asks, "What are we going to do?" And they're angry and they are in tears and they come and hug you because they just want to have their child's murderer found, or they want closure. I tell people I'm one of the fortunate people. My nephew's murderers were apprehended in pretty short amount of time. Sitting in court is a whole different experience. And even when one of three went to jail because they turned on that one, there's never closure. Mm-hmm. His life stopped at 22. He will never be back. Right. So gun violence is not an epidemic when you have lost those you love. I would not wish that type of pain on anybody. So if I can say or do something to help impact the fact that somebody else, even a naysayer, wouldn't have to go through it, I'll do it. But I've never had to drive up to a scene, and that's my job, and see the things that I know some officers have to see. I've never had to go to a door and knock and tell a parent who's waiting for their child to come home or their loved one that they will never be back. So I think whether it's ride-alongs, whether it's having conversations and really understanding would make a difference, because I do believe a part of it is the fact that we just don't understand each other. Right. And the last thing I'm gonna say with that is, I don't believe in this, people like to say, oh, black on black violence, etc. We're not, unless we're saying Asian on Asian, white on white, Latinx. How about this? Human on human. Humanity at the finest. And sometimes we're not at our best. So let's work to make sure we can be at our best so that we don't always have to see people when they're at their worst.
So Dr. Fleming, let the audience know how people can get involved in your organization.
Wow. So we are open to everybody. We have an advisory council for a purpose. That means anyone can come. It doesn't matter if you've been there since 2014 or if you come to the meeting tonight. We have every second Tuesday of the month. We either meet virtually and or in Lincolnville at the Charles Ross Municipal Complex, Lincolnville Town Hall. That's what everybody calls it, the Lincolnville Town Hall. Great. And we meet at 7 p.m. We usually meet to about 8:15. And everyone's welcome. We're an organization and an advisory council that it really is about, you can say I want to do this for a year, things happen in life, you can only do it for a small amount of time or forever. That's the way we get involved. And you want to see a forum, let's talk about it. Let's talk about what we can do to make it happen. We're finding with a virtual presence, it has been absolutely amazing. We would get people in the room, but we would live stream Facebook. We didn't have all this, this get up that we didn't know anything about. And you get some hits and it'll be great. People be on live. We have thousands of hits now. People who are on or watch it later, and we look at the views because it's the information that's important. We want everyone to be involved. We had someone where was this person from, like Utah, watching, cool. And I'm like, Utah, and it happened to be the one that had the physicians talking about things going on in health disparities and this being an epidemic with gun violence, etc. And they were like, I never thought about it like this. So you're engaging with people all over the world.
Wow, that's incredible. And
impact. So we want everyone to be involved. Come on out, whether you're in person or you look on Facebook. We are on Facebook, Taking Back Our Village. Any way we can help, let us know.
So we have several communities that aspire to be like the town of Lincolnville. How can you provide some guidance on how they will be able to have that type of community presence or organization in their community?
I will say this, so I may be here today, but there are so many more people who are a part of this, and having the support of the mayor and the council has been monumental because it provides a location. It also provides the fact that just like the sheriff's office, he's the leader.
Right.
And so within leadership. So look at who your leaders are. But people will say, well, my leader won't do it. I'm sorry. You put them in place to be able to assist the community. Right. It's our jobs, right? But I want to give some names. We are their voices as an organization. We have someone who owns a UPS store in Johns Island. The solicitor's office has representation. The Nevaeh Group, which is a consulting company, this student who happens to be my daughter, she started at 13 years old. Now she is a college student at Claflin University. Carolina Teen Center. We have retired educators. We have members of the Lincolnville community. We have members of the Somerville at Large community. We have co-founder Paige Roper, who happens to be a nurse anesthetist in Walterboro, but lives in Give Hands. Marvin Pendarvis, who we now know not only is an attorney, but he is a South Carolina House of Representative. Dr. Thomas Taylor, who owns Alignment Chiropractic, as well as a community member, Kendra White, who happens to be an engineer. So when I tell you we have some of everybody, you don't have to have a degree. You don't have to live directly in the community. You just have to care about humanity and people and want to see a difference and a change in bringing people together.
So knowledge is power and true community investment.
Definitely.
Thank you, Dr. DaNine Fleming, for joining us on The Beat, hosted by Radia B. And The Beat goes on. This has been The Beat, a conversation about the Charleston County Sheriff's Office in our community. I am Radia B. Look for future episodes by following the Charleston County Sheriff's Office on Facebook, YouTube, or wherever you go to get your podcasts.